for years. It turns out we were right. But while this one is framed as a tax on millionaires, it's only a tax on millionaires this session. It will quickly become a tax on regular people like you and me. We know that we can't trust Olympia politicians. Democrats have given us ample reasons just in the last year to not trust them, that this will only ever apply to millionaires. And as Senator Brown pointed out, despite the governor and others insisting that this is a way to rebalance our tax code, the rebalancing is basically accruing to the benefit of Washington's biggest businesses. While we certainly want to help them, if the point is to make the tax code more fair, I think the tax break should be centered around lowering taxes for those who can least afford to pay them, like sales tax or targeted exemptions like sales tax on diapers or sales tax on prepared food. But instead it looks like majority Democrats are working behind the scenes with Washington's biggest employers to figure out a way to pass an income tax that is going to devastate Washington's economy and also benefit big business. And I'm not sure that's the right direction for Washington. The other issue that has been top of folks' mind here in Olympia is affordability. House and Senate Republicans show up to work every day looking for ways we can make Washington more affordable. I don't have to remind you of how we're in the bottom 5 for affordability in terms of housing, childcare, groceries, things like that. Unfortunately, Democrats, despite acknowledging the problem, are proposing bills that would make these problems worse, not better. There is a new tax on insurance companies that will drive up the cost of health care. That's House Bill 2973. I've talked before about their bill to ban tires with the chemical known as 6-PPD. As introduced, that bill included a secret tire tax that had to be charged, but you couldn't inform customers of the charge. Thankfully, Democrats have removed that $6 fee, but the entire bill is still going to drive up the cost of tires by dramatically reducing the amount of competition in the tire market. Rather than customers who get a flat tire or have a bald tire showing up to the store and have 100 tires to choose from, if this bill passes, they'll have maybe 3 tires to choose from if we're lucky, and that will really raise costs. I mentioned this before, but House Bill 1420 is essentially a de facto tax on clothing. It is EPR for textiles that will make the cost of clothing yourself and your kids before they go to school more expensive. There's House Bill 2442, which contains some local taxes, and then there's a slew of other state taxes. There's a new tax on social media companies, a variety of tax proposals on cigarettes, proposed increase to the solid waste tax. So just in every which way, whether it's direct taxes, lowering or increasing regulation and therefore prices on consumers, legislative Democrats are showing up every day trying to make life in Washington more expensive. So with that, I think we'll, I should mention too, I've got Representative April Connors, our House Republican floor leader, here with us from the House. And I think with that, we can open it up for questions.
Terrific, thank you. So first we will start with Jerry Cornfield from the Washington State Standard.
Good morning. Let me ask you just about the income tax, since you brought it up. First, what provisions do you consider most harmful and absolutely must be removed at this stage?
I'd say the whole bill. I mean, the voters have spoken multiple times, as has the court. And, the other side likes to dismiss court rulings that are nearly, 80, 90 years ago and say that's not relevant today. Well, the voters have also spoken a number of times. And to enact an income tax in the state, I think just flies in the face of the will of the voters. And the Senate Majority Leader made no bones about it and said that, that's it was an easy promise to make that we're breaking. That just says a lot that their view of the voters' desires, and this is a non-starter for us.
Yeah, the two most harmful things, three most harmful, I would say, and I agree with Senator McEwen's point. This whole bill is bad news for the state of Washington. But the marriage tax, the marriage penalty, is grossly unfair. We've seen that in other places, and always that's been corrected. I'm a little shocked that they showed that in their early draft and didn't take the time to work on that. The failure to allow for carry forward is enormously destructive to long-term investment in our state. And frankly, the way they penalize pass-through entities, particularly for ones doing business outside the state of Washington and bringing prosperity back to Washington, puts that as a significant disadvantage compared to everyone else. And that's on top of what I mentioned earlier, which is, very different treatment for certain types of businesses in the state, helping large companies while pushing small and medium companies to the side.
Yeah, I'll echo what both Senator Brown and Senator McEwen said, and I'm sorry, guys, I didn't have my video on at first, but somebody should have said something. I'm here. Yeah, well, I mean, I'll echo what Senator Brown said. There's a marriage penalty that makes no sense and goes to our point that this is not just intended on people who make $1 million a year. Already when they introduced the bill, it will hit people who make $500,000 a year if their spouse also makes that much. It's only a matter of time until that applies to folks with lower and lower incomes, but also it's grossly unfair to essentially penalize folks because they've decided to get married. The denial of loss carry forward is just really, really head scratching. And that will really decimate our housing industry, among others. I mean, there's a variety of industries where that's going to be detrimental, but probably chief among them is the need in this state to build more housing. And if you tell housing developers that they can't carry forward their losses from the early years when they're paying a lot of money to build houses and aren't making a lot of money because they're not ready to be built and sold, that's going to completely dry up capital allocated to this state. And then the other one that I'll point out too is by building Washington taxable income off of adjusted gross income, you capture pass-through income from owners of S-corps and LLCs and partnerships. Oftentimes in practice, this is income that only exists on paper. It's not actually reduced to cash. These folks don't have $1 million hitting their bank account. They have $1 million on paper that may or may not ever materialize. There's an unfairness in asking them to pay a big tax bill on quote unquote phantom income that they can't actually touch. But even to the extent the business really does have cash that they can pay out, you're now going to require businesses to pay out an extra 10% so their owners just can break even on taxes. Again, that's a 10% hit on small businesses. Nobody would have the gumption, at least not yet, maybe it's coming, to propose a 10% tax on small businesses, but that's functionally what this is. So, you provide real relief to regular working Washingtonians rather than big businesses. You get rid of the marriage penalty, you allow loss carry forwards, and you don't tax phantom income on small businesses. I'm not saying I would support it, but at least it would be a sensible tax policy at that point.
And Jerry, I think that one of the important things to remember as we're looking at this income tax bill going forward is exactly what Representative Larry Springer said at the Bellevue Chamber when they asked him, why should the public assume that this isn't going to be an income tax on them by 2031? And he said that the public shouldn't assume that. And I think that should be a big part of what we're talking about as well.
Jerry, did you have a follow-up question?
Different topic, but the other thing, both House and Senate Republicans are hosting listening sessions today on the initiatives. And my question is, did either caucus invite opponents of the initiatives to participate, make presentations as part of these events today?
Yes, even a balanced hearing or listening session, excuse me.
Yeah, Jerry, we did. And for context, I know you know this, but for other folks tuning in, the Constitution says that initiatives of the legislature shall take precedence over all other matters. It doesn't say exactly what that means. I agree that it doesn't mean that we must pass them, because the Constitution also contemplates for what happens if the legislature doesn't pass them. But the legislature needs to do something to signal that these initiatives are being considered and are taking precedence over everything else. We think a really easy way to do that is to hold hearings. Democrats disagree, but they won't suggest any other way these initiatives can take precedence over the rest of our business, even if we end up not passing them and sending them to the ballot. So after in the House, we moved to require or to instruct the committee, the Education Committee, to hold a hearing Democrats voted that down on a party line vote. And so in response, House and Senate Republicans are holding a listening session because we want to show the public what can happen if responsible people are in charge who just want the truth rather than pursuing an agenda and silencing dissenting voices. So that's what Republicans are doing with the listening session. I can let the senators talk about the Senate session they're leading, but over on the House side, our listening session, we have invited every single member of the legislature from all four caucuses, so Republicans and Democrats, and we have invited an equal number of speakers who both support and oppose the initiative. For those who oppose the initiative, we've invited the WEA, Superintendent Chris Reichdahl, the ACLU, the Gender Justice League, Planned Parenthood, Northwest Progressive Institute, SEIU 775, Lavender Rights Project, Washington Youth Alliance, Team Child, the Washington State Democrats, and Pro-Choice Washington. If anybody knows any other con folks who would like to participate, let us know. We did our best to try to find a representative cross-section of those opposed to the initiatives, because we think the public has a right to hear folks with opinions talk about why their view of the initiatives is correct and let the public make informed choices. Democrats are denying the public this debate because I think because they know they're on the losing side and the public will side against them. But we want to hear from everybody, and we want the public to be able to make up their own minds. And not sure why Democrats are refusing to do that, but Republicans will step in and fill the void and provide some leadership on it.
And Jerry, if people want more information on those listening sessions, they can go to our House Republican page, WashingtonHouseRepublicans.org. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't have it exactly, but there is a giant button on there, a big red button that says make your voice heard. So if they would like to put their input in, they can do that online as well.
Yeah, Jerry, we end up having two sessions because we have so many people interested in talking about the initiatives before us. So, and we invited a similar list that Representative Stokesbury mentioned to the Senate listening session. So I think we're going to have a broad and varied opinions. That's exactly the point, is to listen and hear from the folks and let them share their comments.
Great. Thank you. Next, we'll go to Carlene Johnson with Center Square. Carlene, go ahead.
I have two quick questions, but with all those folks invited, pro-choice folks and WEA and do we have any idea if any of them have accepted your invitation?
That's a great question. I don't know yet. Our deputy leader, Chris Corey, was the one that sent out the invitation. I haven't seen him yet this morning, but I was meaning to check. Again, that will be telling if folks are too afraid to even articulate why they're opposed to these initiatives.
Okay, I have two quick questions. Rep Connors, I know in House Housing yesterday, two of those pretty controversial bills made it out of committee, basically going to not allow local jurisdictions to stop homeless people from camping, and also they can apparently set up near daycares and schools and other things. Those could have some pretty devastating impacts for local jurisdictions. Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Sure. Yes, both of those bills. There was the STEP housing bill, which was Rep Peterson's bill, and then there was the camping bill, which was Mia Gregerson's bill. The camping bill itself would would make jurisdictions have to be able to have a shelter bed available to move the homeless person to the shelter bed prior to having to move them. Otherwise, they would not be able to move them. So, we're talking about kids' soccer fields. We're talking about public schools. Just yesterday, Carlene, after that hearing, I had a nice young student from PLU in here, and her mom is a teacher at Capitol High School, or was, and said there was one morning that she woke up, prior to the Supreme Court case that stopped a lot of this and allowed cities and towns to be able to move homeless folks. She said that her mom woke up one morning, walked out the door to let her students in, and there was a homeless person, laying right there in the door in front of the school. And so those are the kind of things that this will allow again. And then one of the big parts about this bill is the ability to sue the city. So if the homeless person feels like there wasn't a bed or shelter space, if they weren't offered it, and the city did move them without being offered that space or put in that space, that the city could be sued. And so big questions about what if these unhoused folks don't want to be moved? What if they want to stay there? We tried a series of amendments yesterday in the House Housing Committee, as you saw, I think you were in there, where we tried to say, hey, at least let's not let them do this anywhere close to a school or on a school grounds or in a city park where kids are playing, so there's not needles and feces and things that could harm our children. And the Democrats completely voted that down yesterday.
My other quick question is directed to Senator Braun. Senator Peterson said last week that he was willing to have conversation with you about your bill. I think is it 6502, the one to kind of have some oversight on these NGOs with all the suspected fraud that's been exposed. Have you had a chance to have a conversation with him, and what do you think the odds are of your bill getting at least to the floor?
No, I have not had talked to him. I suspect he was too busy preparing the income tax bill we're talking about, but we're still pushing on the bill. We had a good hearing. There is, as you know, there is deep concern across Washington by citizens who are deeply frustrated that they're doing their part, they're supporting their family and their community, paying their taxes, and yet they see at least indications of significant waste and fraud in many parts of our state government. And this bill just gets at it in a very, I think, thoughtful, professional way. It's not attacking anyone. It's just trying to make sure if we're going to spend state money, we know where it's going and it's transparent. So we'll see. We're still working on it. We got another day before cutoff, so I remain optimistic.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Shauna Sowersby from the Seattle Times.
Hey, good morning. I'm here with Sophia. So part of the income tax proposal included a funding mechanism for public defense. I'm wondering, since you're already against the income tax proposal, what you think would be a better way to help counties cover rising public defender costs?
Well, I think if you look at the priorities of budgeting over the last decade, it's been grossly out of whack. I mean, in 2013, going into that session, the budget was about $32 billion. Today, we're pushing 80. I mean, in that growth, the majority couldn't find to make that constitutional duty that we have a priority. That to me it speaks to so many issues, and we hear time and again, well, we just need a tax to fix this, but it never stops, and they'll continue to complain about the regressivity, but not provide tax relief to the working class of the state. So it comes down to their budget priorities, and their budget priorities are frankly out of touch with the realities of the vast majority of Washington citizens.
Yeah, I support providing counties additional funding to cover these defense costs. It's about $200 million a year. To Senator McEwen's point, in a budget of $78 billion, if we simply prioritize and make sure we're using our funds carefully and wisely, we could afford to help the counties in this way. It does not require an additional income tax of $4 billion a year to meet this requirement.
And Shauna, since you're with Sophia, does Sophia have a question?
I do, yes, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So my question is about the policy committee cutoff day that's quickly approaching tomorrow. Are there any specific bills in your caucus's priority areas that you guys are concerned may not advance before this February 4th cutoff? And if so, what makes those bills particularly difficult to move at this stage?
Well, it was asked about earlier, the Senate Bill 6205, and there's a similar bill. The number I draw a blank on, but it's Senator Gaynor's bill that helps deal with some fraud measures. These are important. They're not gigantic bills, but they're important bills that help deal earnestly with the allegations of fraud or misuse of funding throughout our state government. So those are two bills we're watching pretty closely. There's lots of other bills. Candidly, there's a lot more bad bills, too many to list here that we're worried about. I'm going to be done here. I'm going to go to Commerce and Labor, where we have a whole stack of mostly bad labor bills that are going to drive up the cost of doing things, of hiring employees, of providing services in the state of Washington, and therefore increase the cost of living to every single Washingtonian. I'm worried about more stuff like that than I am about specific bills of ours to get through.
Sophia, I think I could say from our House Republican caucus, again, talking like Senator Braun said, the affordability piece is very important to us, but also the public safety piece, particularly, especially when we're talking about things like that are happening in my community right now with sexually violent predators being potentially housed in our communities. We have a series of 8 bills in the House that we have requested hearings on, that the Democrat leadership has said basically, no, we're not going to hear any of your bills on public safety that help your communities, but they are hearing opposite bills in the House Appropriations Committee last night, where they were taking a bill that would reduce the crime for a sexual offender for not registering. So we have like a complete opposite end of the public safety committee happening right now. So not advancing smart public safety bills. And then the other one that we want to make sure that, tries to get fixed this year was the Keeping Families Safe, Keeping Families Together Act, which has been a real problem in Washington State with all the deaths of kids because of being exposed to drugs and fentanyl and those things. And so those are all bills we're keeping a good eye on, but certainly public safety is top of mind with affordability on our side.
Thank you.
Terrific. And now we will go to Simone Carter from McClatchy. Go ahead, Simone.
Thank you. So I had a question about the millionaire's tax. Opponents of taxes on the wealthy have often warned that it could lead to capital flight. Often people point to Jeff Bezos as an example, while supporters of millionaire's tax have cast doubt on those claims. So other than Jeff Bezos, can y'all point to any other examples to support the idea that such a proposal would cause the wealthy to flee Washington?
Well, Simone, first of all, it's an income tax with an arbitrary threshold. So let's just call it what it is. It's an income tax. And I don't have the data sheet in front of me. We can get it to you after this. But actually, if you look at that, there's been a pattern here over the last few years of those with means leaving the state, and the people moving into the state are without means or less means, maybe is a better way to put that. And that's an IRS data point that, again, we can provide that to you. I don't have it handy. So yeah, people do make decisions based on economics. That's just reality. And you're not only seeing it from the upper middle class and higher, but the middle class. And I look in my own district, and the number of folks that I personally know that have chosen to leave the state for a variety of reasons, that is real. And one of the biggest drivers is economics. And again, maybe this proposed income tax is not initially going to hit the vast majority of Washingtonians, but what is hitting them is the property tax, and it's becoming more and more unaffordable. And again, we continue to not see any proposed relief to the working class of the state, and those folks are starting to seriously look and have looked and moved to other states that have better economics for their family.
Look, just in the last day, we've seen additional layoffs from Amazon. We saw some high-level layoffs from T-Mobile. It's a steady pattern, and Senator McEwen's point, not just the numbers, which I know for many years, decades even, we had net positive immigration into the state of Washington. In recent years, the data has been very clear. It's about even, but the only reason it's about even is because international migration into the state of Washington. Domestic migration is definitely negative in Washington. And the more important point, if you look at the tax revenue migration out of the state of Washington, the trend is pretty clear. And frankly, the signals just sent last year with the increase in the estate tax primarily, prior to that with the capital gains income tax, people are making plans. None of this happens, immediately, but it's happening. I can guarantee you that.
And Simone, I'm going to just chime in because in a couple things. In my day job, I am a real estate agent. And since I left session last year, I stay pretty busy, which is good, but 10 of the transactions that I've had in the last year were people leaving Washington, and 5 of those 10 were leaving because of the estate tax that was passed last year, because they can't afford to die in Washington because of how expensive it is now. Not only do those people leave, but those people that are leaving, those 5 that just I sold in my community of 1,000 realtors in the Tri-Cities, they are giving back to our community. They are philanthropists. They are donating. One of the clients that moved, the first thing they do, they told me, is they start donating in the state that they're moving to establish their residency. And one of those gives over $100,000 a year to Tri-Cities, places like the Boys and Girls Clubs, domestic violence shelters, all of those kind of things. And those are the kind of people that we're pushing out of Washington. I also have a lot of clients who are financial planners. They have basically told me that what they are doing is advising their clients to make their primary residence somewhere other than Washington. So the theory that people aren't going to move, or it's Jeff Bezos, is not what is happening. It is already happening, and if this tax pass, it'll continue to happen, and it'll continue to happen at a higher rate.
Yeah,
Yes.
give me a little bit of time to think about two. If you want big names, Ken Fisher, Fisher Investments, just south of my district, moved a couple years ago to Texas. Ed Schweitzer, who built and runs Schweitzer Engineering over in Pullman. It's a multi-billion-dollar company built from scratch over the last 30 years. Has moved to Idaho. And I'm sure if you give us a little bit of time, we could probably come up with dozens more. This is really happening, and the denial that it's happening, I think, is bad for the state of Washington. This is a small business, medium-sized business income tax, if you want to characterize it as something that's going to destroy our economy long-term.
Yeah, Simone, there was a 2004 study that looked at IRS migration data, and Washington had the 8th highest loss of high-earning households of any state in the country. And then there is a 2025 study that showed wealthy Gen Zers are flying even faster, and we're actually number 2 behind only Illinois in terms of affluent Gen Z folks that are leaving Washington. So the data definitely bears us out. It's definitely more than anecdotes. IRS data shows us as well.
And it's just not the proposal of an income tax, as I mentioned before. It's the host of everything going on. We're also faced with the prospect of the majority party passing the statewide payroll tax that kicks in at $125,000, which is interesting because the average salary of a union worker at Boeing is $119,000. Which means half of them are above that. These bad economic policies have consequences, and you might not have it overnight, but it's going to have an impact on both business and personal decisions.
And sorry to beat the dead horse here, but I forgot one other point, because I literally just was briefed on this yesterday. The Association of Washington Business conducted a study of business owners in Washington and found that 1 in 2 business owners are now looking at moving out of state.
Simone, did you have a follow-up question?
No, thank you so much. But yeah, I might be emailing you after this about that data sheet that
Okay,
Senator
great.
McEwen referred to. Thank you.
And next we'll go to Drew Mickelson from King 5. Maybe. Okay, if he pops back on, I'll give him a minute in just a second. With that, we will go to Jacob Moore from the Chronicle.
Yeah, just kind of a follow-up to Sophia's question earlier about what bills had died. Are there any bills that, are kind of have made it through and that you're glad have made it through and that you're prioritizing through to the next deadline coming up later this month to get through their House version?
Sadly, don't have a long list of bills that we are prioritizing. The situation here in Olympia, where we are opposed to bills that are going to drive up affordability, puts us in the position of opposing most of the bills, because the bills that not many Republican bills are moving, and the Democrat bills that are moving are generally ones that are going to drive up the cost of living here in Washington. Oh, sorry, Jacob, I don't have a good answer for you today. So I'm not sure there is a good answer.
Jacob, did you have a follow-up?
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Great, thanks. So with that, we will go to Mitchell Rowland from the Spokesman.
Hi, good morning. The governor is out with a statement saying that he couldn't support the income tax on millionaires in its current form as written. Does that provide any optimism that there's some room to negotiate between Republicans and Democratic lawmakers, or do you just envision that these negotiations in the coming weeks will be between Democratic lawmakers and the governor's office?
I would say so far what we're seeing the latter, that they're really not interested in perspective from Republicans. They're barely interested in perspective from the business community. This is really a debate between Democrats who feel like they have the power to decide this. And I appreciate the governor pushing back, because it's a shockingly low amount of tax release given all the talk about trying to balance our tax code. This bill, it's like, I think, as I said earlier, only about 5% of the $4 billion a year that it would collect goes into tax relief in any meaningful way.
Yeah, echo what Senator Brown said. I mean, I'm not sure the proponents of the bill in the legislature are particularly interested in anyone's feedback. They had the courtesy of asking some business lobbyists for their feedback. I know what folks in the business community sent in as feedback. I have looked at the bill that was introduced yesterday. I'm not sure any of the feedback was incorporated. I want to look a little bit more closely, but at this point, I've not yet found any of that feedback incorporated. So it looks like a little bit of a just cursory effort at soliciting feedback. So if they're not interested in folks who deal with these complicated tax issues every day, I'm not sure they're going to be terribly interested in what the governor has to say. I appreciate the governor pushing back a little bit. I agree we should have more tax relief. Won't find a lot of daylight between me and him on that point. But what matters is not what the governor says. We learned this last year. What matters is not what the governor says in the third week of session. What matters is what the governor does the last week of session. He said good things the third week of session, last session, and then ended up just signing whatever the Democrat majorities in the legislature wanted anyway. So I would care more about what he's going to do the last week of session than what he says the third week of session.
Great, thank you. And next we will go to Jake Goldstein-Street from the Washington State Standard.
Thanks, Kim. I've got a question, Senator, about a bill from Senator Warnick related to applying for a waiver for the use of SNAP benefits to restrict using those benefits for unhealthy foods like candy and soda. I was wondering if you've gotten any indication from the majority if that legislation has a path. I know it's got an exec scheduled for tomorrow.
Yeah, I don't think we have a firm answer. I know that Senator Warnick is working that bill pretty hard and trying to answer any concerns the majority has had on the bill. It's an important bill to make sure as we're providing this important benefit to folks who qualify, that we do it in a way that actually leads to good decisions and best outcomes for the money we're putting into it.
Great, thank you very much. And finally, we will go to Cassie Diamond with the Washington Newspaper Publishers Association.
Thank you. So from my understanding, the Senate may hear on the floor either tomorrow or later this week, Senate Bill 6002, which basically create a regulatory framework for automated license plate reader camera systems and the data captured by them by local and state agencies. So I was wondering whether there's any sort of wider Republican support for the bill, given it did pass out of the Law and Justice Committee with bipartisan support.
Yeah, sure. So these are cameras in use in a growing number of our cities. They're used to detect and record data for a variety of potential criminal acts, sometimes misdemeanors, sometimes felonies. And I know that Senator Holy has worked hard he signed on the bill initially. He worked hard to improve the bill. I know in a couple ways. I believe he extended the period out from 72 hours to 21 days for the retention of data. He's improved the way that data is retained. And there's a couple other changes that were made that I think are encouraging. So far, at least to my knowledge, the cities and law enforcement are still very concerned about the bill. So I don't think you have broad Republican support. I appreciate what Senator Holy is doing to try to improve the bill, but I don't think we're quite there yet from the perspective of the Senate Republicans, which is based largely on concerns raised by cities, counties, and law enforcement.
Probably too early to say what the mood is over here amongst House Republicans. I don't think we've got a similar bill in the House. I know I've heard a lot of skepticism from folks coming into my office, from some of the cities and from some of the law enforcement groups. I've not heard of any of my caucus members who support it, but obviously, you know, we'll have a pretty robust debate if and when it does come over here.
Perfect. Cassie, did you have another question?
Nope, that's all for me. Thank you.
Terrific. Well, that wraps up our question and answer period. So I will turn it back over to Senator Braun to wrap things up.
Well, great. Thanks, Kim. And thanks everyone for being here today. I think we have a record crowd. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the work you do to try and keep our citizens informed of what we're doing in Olympia over the course of the session. As I've said many times, we're going to stay focused on affordability, and that's going to, you know, wherever a bill comes before us that's going to drive up the cost of living for Washingtonians, we're going to work to either stop the bill or make it better to, you know, seriously get after the cost of living issues that people are facing every day in the normal course of their lives. So thanks again for being here. We look forward to talking to you soon.
Yep, I agree with what Senator Braun said. Appreciate you all being here. Encourage you all to cover the bills that make Washington more or less affordable. It's one of the biggest issues facing the public right now, and hope you cover the impact that some of the debates here in Washington, in this Washington, will have on the affordability crisis facing our constituents. Also, reminder that there are listening sessions being held on the initiatives at 4 and 6 o'clock. I hope that you come and cover it so you can see what it is like to responsibly run this building and have fair hearings on controversial issues that respect opinions of all sides, and aim to hear those opinions and educate the public rather than shut out dissenting voices. So hope you all are willing to join us.
I'll make one final note before we sign off, and that is just a quick correction. The first listening session tonight is at 4:30, not 4 o'clock. And that will be in the first floor conference room of INB. And we will see you next week. Thanks.